All right, thank you, everyone. Tonight is Thursday, January 18, 2018. We're starting a little bit later than anticipated. Our executive session went on for a few extra minutes, but this is the Board of Selectmen's meeting. First up on our agenda is a request for signs at the Country Cupboard for 76 Main Street. Come on down, folks. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Be quick, so
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
This is going to be in your, I think if I sit it here, right?
That's fine.
All right. Hi, I'm Michelle Tuck from Tuck & Tuck Architects. We were here last month talking about the facade renovation, the addition in the back, and the renovation on the interior. So today we're here to talk about signs. And as you see in your packet, or I can show you here, because we're renovating the facade, we need to do some new signage. Some signage can actually stay the same, and that's the bright clean, the dog wax, and pet store signage.
Right.
It's the same size, it's just relocated, or removed, renovated, put back on again. And then the signage that needs to change would be the Country Cupboard and Subway signage. They both actually get smaller in the new facade. And then Dunkin' Donuts is a new sign.
Right.
If you add up all of the sign square footage for the three signs that change, the two signs that change, Subway and Country Cupboard, and you add in Dunkin' Donuts, we have a net loss of 6 square feet from what we had existing to what we're proposing.
Okay. I know you had, we were in the last month and you showed us sort of what was going on, and we had a sort of brief discussion about that concerning the sign. So I think it's fine. I mean, pretty much it's the same signage, except it's a little bit smaller now. So we had no problem with it before. I have no problem with it now. I'm sure, have you discussed this with the building inspector in terms of whatever permitting you need and whatnot?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sure he's fine with it?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Any questions, gentlemen?
No, fine.
Okay, well then, if we're all okay with it, then I'll accept the motion to approve the change in signage for the Country Cupboard building at 476 Main.
So moved. Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we appreciate you helping us get back to us again.
Yeah, I think you might have.
All right, next up on our agenda is review and vote to approve rules and regulations regarding dogs on conservation land. Rebecca, come on down.
Hello, how are you this evening?
Good, how are you?
Good. So I'm not sure if you have a copy of
Yes,
those
yes we do.
regulations?
Yes we do.
So the commission had voted to basically accept these if, and respectfully ask that you basically enact them so that we can start enforcing it on conservation properties. The goal is basically, it's nothing new from our perspective, but rather setting something in writing from what we're expecting as a town as well in terms of respectful and responsible use of conservation properties. It's not to degrade anyone's experience. We've heard some issues from the animal control officer along with other people on different conservation properties that have had poor experiences because of different issues basically which led us to these rules and regulations. And we also, I did some research and looked at 5 other towns along with the DCR is working on rules and regulations. And most other towns can be summed up in similar aspects, which are the dogs are kept on trails, to clean up after the dogs, keep under control, whether it be on leash or direct contact or voice control. And then the number of dogs are limited to 1 per adult hand, and also respect for wildlife and the conservation property regarding the natural resources there.
And this just puts things in writing so that you have something that you can enforce.
Yes,
The town
we have
has
something to point to, because prior to that, we don't have anything.
Okay, no, I think it makes perfect sense that this be memorialized this way.
So just so the board can be clear, what is the enforcement mechanism if a violation occurs?
The mechanism or the individual?
How is it enforced?
So the animal control officer will enforce it. There are, for instance, one requirement is for the people who create income by walking dogs, and then multiple dogs, or in this case, it'll be limited to 1 per adult hand per individual. They're required to have licenses, and it would follow the same requirements that are already in place for an animal control officer when they fall into these issues already. But it is something we want to put these in place so we have something to point to, and then if this doesn't resolve most of the issues, maybe next year visit a bylaw that is fines and fees more extensive than what the animal control officer can impose.
So this will be a next step, and we'll see how this works.
Right.
And if this is not necessarily as adequate as we think, then we'll take it to the next level. Okay.
So, does Susan Latham anticipate being busier because of this?
I haven't heard one way or another on that. I'm not positive she's actually here tonight or not.
No, she's not.
Okay. But that wasn't a question that I had asked her or that she had brought up to me, but rather just she encouraged an outreach opportunity at the beginning of this in terms of have a few people there who are just handing out some of the rules and regulations. But aside from that, I don't think she expects to be busier, but I didn't ask that question.
But just this gives her a more teeth to enforce things.
Correct.
Right, so she may not necessarily be more busy, but it just gives her more ability to enforce. Okay. All right, let's give it a try. I'm all in favor. Any other questions, gentlemen?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused. It's basically, if you're a dog walker, you can have 2 dogs, be walking 2 dogs at a time.
Correct.
And the dog walker shall not congregate with more than 5. Is that to keep multiple dog walkers from working together, or what's behind? I don't understand how that goes along with the 1 per hand thing.
Sure. So, for instance, not to break it down too simple, but exactly what you're talking about, it's so that they can't congregate. So if you have 3 dog walkers with 2 dogs each, they're not going to be able to congregate together, and that's due to the fact that they don't have to be on leash still, because we understand that Bolton residents like the aspect that they can let their dogs run but be under voice control.
Yeah.
But so that goes with that as well. So you're not necessarily on leash 2 per adult. But so it's talking about when you're congregating, they may not be on leash. So if there's more than 4 dogs, you're going to run into more issues. So that's why we're limiting it to
So
no
a dog
more than
walker
5.
could have 2 dogs on a leash and 3 on voice?
No.
Okay.
No,
Just
it's
2.
just 2 each leash or
Okay.
not. Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Next up on our agenda is review the draft complete streets policy.
I have some slides that I have to print out.
Good evening. This
Hi,
is
Erica.
Chris Kuschel from MAPC. MAPC has been assisting us with developing the Complete Streets policy.
Super,
and
thank you.
He's put together a presentation for you this
Okay.
evening.
Sure. So,
Good evening.
thanks for having me.
Sure.
Happy to dive right in.
Great, thank you.
So we have been working with a number of the communities in our region over the last few years on advancing complete streets. I'm so happy to be working with Bolton now. So I'll just dive right in. First, just to talk about what actually we mean when we say what are complete streets. On page 3, I have a pretty simple definition: roadways that are safe, comfortable, and accessible for users of all ages, abilities, income, regardless of how one travels. It's a pretty simple definition, but contains a few elements embedded within that. One is that we start to think about the needs for all the users of the road that we might not always traditionally have been thinking about. So what are the needs of children? What are the needs of seniors? What are the needs of people with disabilities to get around the community? Also, an acknowledgement that not everybody wants to or can drive every place. So how can people get around from other ways, such as walking and increasingly biking, which has become a much more popular form of getting around we've been seeing. And then the other sort of aspect of when we're talking about complete streets, to go to page 6, is another reason that I've been kind of really attracted to the movement is there's a strong focus on context sensitivity. And so there's some pictures there that you can see what a complete street is in a city like Somerville or Cambridge is going to be very different from a complete street in Littleton or Bolton, for example. Even within a community on the next page, what a complete street might look like in a downtown sort of commercial district within the town is going to be different from when you're in a residential area. The next slide, next 2 pages, give a couple examples of what is not a complete street. I think they sort of speak for themselves. The first one being just this 5-lane arterial where people clearly want to be crossing, but they have no safe way to do so. The next page showing a woman in a wheelchair who isn't able to easily get up onto the sidewalk. So there's a sidewalk there, but there's no accessible ramp. I've also, in my experience, there's been a number of sort of misconceptions related to complete streets, and so I just want to take a second to address a few of what those misconceptions that kind of crop up are. The first is that what I wrote here is that complete streets are not a design prescription. And by that what I mean is it doesn't say that every single street would have, let's say, 6-foot sidewalks with street trees and pedestrian lighting and a 5-foot bicycle lane. Again, as I sort of mentioned at the beginning, there are a set of principles. So it's a lens upon which to look at as you reconstruct roads or build roads. How can we sort of keep in mind the needs of all the users? The next one saying it's not a ban on cars. That's something that has sort of come up. I don't think of this, besides the fact that it's completely unrealistic, even if that could be a goal. I don't think of this as subtractive. It's not intended to take away choices, but I'd rather add choices to people. And then it's not only for cities. That it's certainly the movement started in more urban areas, but now we see it in all types of contexts, from rural, suburban to the urban. Again, keeping in mind the context sensitivity component. So the policy that we have drafted with a number of stakeholders within the town, page 14 provides sort of just a few bullets about what the policy is. It's intended to provide high-level direction for the town. Again, it's not intending to say what should be built exactly on any one road. And it really has this focus on incremental change, looking so that over the years, as you either reconstruct or have maintenance on roadways, you'll start to create a network throughout the town of complete streets. And then on slide 15, this is a lot more sort of word-heavy, dense page. These are, I pulled out what I consider sort of the key elements that are within the policy, and I don't think we have time to go through all of them, but just to call out a few, again, it starts with this vision of what sort of Bolton wants to be kind of in the future and what that commitment is. There's a strong focus, I think, in this policy, probably more than most that we've worked on this really just hammering home this context sensitivity. Again, just to keep in mind that Bolton sort of has this rural character throughout a lot of the town, and this need to maintain that as part of the goals, while still looking at it from Complete Streets perspective. There would be the creation of a Complete Streets Committee. This would have some of the kind of key stakeholders who've been involved throughout the process so far, including the DPW director, somebody from the Board of Selectmen potentially, fire department, et cetera, police, who would basically look at either the plans or opportunities for incorporating complete streets into the roadways. For a lot of the routine projects, like routine maintenance types of things, the DPW director would be sort of directed to use his best judgment on what to do for that. And then there's a focus on the best practices. There's a lot of guidance out there. There's one that's actually quite new, specifically called the Small Town and Rural Design Guide that came out from Federal Highway, and so that's listed as one of the main sources that would be used to help create what the potential solutions could be. So those are really kind of the elements of the policy. Just the last slide on page 16 kind of gives a little bit of the broader context. I mean, we work with communities on these policies because we think it's the right thing to do. But I guess the new carrot, relatively new carrot, is that Mass DOT has created a funding program called the Complete Streets Program. And that provides funding to communities who go through, there's a 3-tier process. So the first tier, which is sort of where we are in this process here, is to adopt a complete streets policy. Related to that is somebody within the town has to attend a training that Bay State Roads sort of puts on related to complete streets. So that's kind of that part's a pretty easy lift. It's like only a few-hour training. Then the next phase, so once the policy is adopted and somebody puts it into MassDOT's system, the next phase is to create a prioritization plan. And MassDOT provides $50,000 to the communities to hire a consultant. MEPC works on them, but basically it could be any consultant that would be interested in creating. Essentially, this creates a list of projects for a 5-year plan for where these sort of interventions could be. And then they provide actual funding for construction, not for design, up to $400,000 per year per community. So it's, you know, money goes really quickly when you're doing roadway improvements, but it's also, it's not nothing. It helps, you know, and the focus, because $400,000, you're not going to do a complete street reconstruction that would be more appropriate for something like a MassWorks grant. They tend to be focusing on smaller sort of interventions, intersection improvements, traffic calming things, to essentially supplement, I guess, other efforts. So I also put the dates on there for when there are due dates for this fiscal year. You know, this program was originally started as a 2-year program, which I think will be finishing, and MassDOT it's been very successful. They are continuing it. I'm not sure how long into the future, but they are moving forward. So I think I've left a few minutes if there's any comments or questions. I'm happy to try and answer them.
So is there, obviously, we have a draft here which we have to review. So that has to get done first. So I would assume that probably based upon that the earliest we could do something for Tier 2 would be September 1st.
Yeah, correct.
Of this year. That would be our only shot, or April of 19. So that's sort of the temp of the timeline, if you will. Because we're certainly not going to get anything done by April 1st.
Right, and the policy needs to be adopted by the Board of Selectmen, but then it also needs to be approved by Mass DOT. They have a scoring system. Essentially, they review it based on those key elements that Chris had mentioned, and the community needs to score at least an 80 for it to pass.
Okay.
So.
And what is the time frame? Say whatever point in time we get this done and submit. Is there some type of window? Is it 30, 60, 90 days?
I think I can double check. I think it's 30 days. I think they're pretty quick in terms of turning around the policy review.
Okay.
I also want to mention too, this is a working draft. I have sent it to Joe Lynch, our DPW director, and he's been reviewing it. And next week we're going to sit down and he's going to provide his feedback to me as well. So. I obviously I can distribute that to the board once I have his input.
Okay.
So are we here to vote on this pending that draft?
No, it's really to get the update tonight, and then you'll get the draft, and then the hope is that the board will vote at the next meeting. This is really for your information, to get the flavor of it tonight.
And if you have any questions on the policy, feel free to email me, call me, and hopefully I can answer any
No,
questions.
it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
I don't have any, and there's nothing that jumps out at me and says, whoa, you know, better look at this closely. So I think it's a pretty fair representation of what we want to do.
Yeah.
It's really a very good program, and it's only in our best interest to adopt a policy that fits our town and move forward with it, because, as Chris said, the carrot at the end is the $400,000, but we want to make sure that we're using that money in the way that works best for the community.
No, good, it's good work. So so you'll hear back from Joe, and hopefully the next meeting we'll have an opportunity to vote on it.
Yep.
Okay.
And that'll be February 8th, is our next meeting.
February 8th.
Okay. I guess before we stop, any comments or questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none. Closed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up on our agenda is the town administrator.
Okay, the update on Minuteman, which was going to be on the previous agenda, I was not able to make the last building committee meeting. I had a conflict, so I don't have an update for tonight, but we do have another building committee meeting scheduled for the 29th, so I will have an update on the 8th. One thing I'd like to add before I get to the update on the meeting with Jay Ash is I did send an email to the board, and she hates it when I do this, but I did send an email out to the board that Erica led the effort to get us the, I know, the $25,000, up to $25,000 grant under the community compact for our ADA transition plan.
Yay.
So we can.
Congratulations.
Thank
We continue to pursue grant money. I feel very strongly about handicap accessibility and ADA compliance, and that was one of the 3 projects that we chose under the community compact, and our application was well received, and Erica deserves a substantial amount of the credit for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
Have a nice evening.
And then the update with Secretary Ash. Secretary Ash is the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development for the Commonwealth, and there is a working group, actually called the Town Administrators Working Group, which is organized by the Neshoba Valley Chamber of Commerce. And Secretary Ash came out to our January meeting, and there were, I think, 16 of us present. It was by invitation only. And he was with us for about an hour, talked about issues in the various communities and so forth. I had never met Secretary Ash before, but I've heard him speak, but I never met him before. He's a very impressive, highly impressive individual. And so, not being shy, I took the opportunity to talk some about 117 and the challenges that we have with 117. And I try to frame it in 2 aspects, because, you know, economic development is a primary focus of his office, and they want to hear about economic development projects and infrastructure to perhaps be enhanced for. But what I talked about is we have a 2-pronged issue. One is we have property that we would like to see developed, but we need to improve the infrastructure as it exists now to make it palatable for people to occupy, whether it's Bolton Office Park or whatever. You know, we've got existing property that we're looking to fully fill, but we can't do that easily because, and I talked about Paragon, and Paragon already has issues. And then I also talked about, we are a corridor here, you know, we're a bigger issue, and 117 is a bigger impact than simply Bolton, you know, looking up and down the line. And I you know, and Route 2 and the usage of Route 2 is also a factor on 117 to some extent. So he seemed quite interested, and we talked quite a bit about what options we have at our disposal as a small town with very little business. What we can do to try to take advantage of some of the grant money that's out there. For instance, the MassWorks grant that was just mentioned. To be competitive, there needs to be an economic development aspect of it. You know, in a larger community that has more business, if we were to attract a new business in that either wanted to build new or go into an existing structure, to look at job creation, you know, they like to see, generally like to see hundreds of jobs. And how much money is the company investing in the town? Is the town perhaps willing to waive some of the property tax revenue for some period of time in order to make it more palatable for the business? Or it's a tax increment financing deal is what it's actually called. I negotiated 5 of them when I was in Clinton, but we're a much different environment than Clinton. But that being said, he did say that we should be looking at, and I've already briefed Erica on this, and she'll be working with the planning board, but we should look at creating a zone or district somewhere in town within which we're hoping to expand business. You know, it doesn't mean we're talking about a big box store, but and I acknowledge that, you know, we would not do the hundreds and hundreds of jobs being created that they would look to see normally, and he said they really don't look at it in that context. You know, job creation is important on a smaller scale. I said, well, perhaps, you know, and I was being rhetorical, only 100 jobs. And he said, well, you know, as low as 50, you know, we would still be interested in. So, you know, a 1 or 2 job creation really doesn't draw any interest to improving the infrastructure. But, you know, even 50 in the right area would work. So Erica was pretty excited about that. And we'll be talking more. Erica will be working with the planning board on that. We have to get through the prep for town meeting first and the zoning proposals that are coming forward. But pretty excited about that. I spoke with Kate Hogan after the meeting and, you know, told her that, you know, about the session, and she was very excited about that too. And she has a very strong relationship with Secretary Ash. So who knows, maybe something can come of it. At least we made the connection, got some great feedback directly from the secretary, and we'll see how we can hopefully make some progress on that.
Great, no, it sounds like a good first step.
You know, and economic development, you know, I mean, I did economic development for 7 years. It's a fun part of the job, but it's always, you know, within the proper context of the community. We always need to remember that. So that's all I have for this evening, unless the board has any questions.
I'm good, gentlemen. All right, then, next up on the agenda is Board of Selectmen business. First up under that heading is discussion regarding 2018 top initiatives by Bolton Local. Anyone from Bolton Local wants to come down? Great. Hi, everybody, how are you?
Nice to see you again.
Yep, we do.
Great. So thank you for giving
Oh,
us
you're very
this
welcome.
opportunity, or inviting us here to share our initiatives with you, I should say. Well, we 3 are sitting at the table. There's a lot of people who, you know, are involved with Bolton Local, many in the room, many in the town that aren't here tonight. But over the last number of years since we started, we've accomplished a number of things in the town that help support the community, become more green, more sustainable, and as you all know, save money. The recent Green Communities passing of that helped the town save a lot of money. There's more money to follow, I understand, from conversations with Don and Erica.
I think the initial award was $141,000.
Correct.
And we've got 10, we can't apply for more money until we spend everything we have. And we've got about, we had about $10,000 left to spend, and we were looking at, well, we need the fencing for the propane tanks. And the assumption had been, well, we're gonna need to hit the DPW 422 account, whatever, to pay for the fencing, which I think is in the neighborhood of at least $4,000, if I remember the quote. And I said to Erica, why can't we pay for that out of the grant? And she said, I don't think it falls under the grant. And I said, well, let's make a phone call and find out. And she made a phone call and came back and said, we can use the money for the fence. So that worked out really well. So
this is for the new boilers that are gas fired?
Yes,
and
yes.
the tanks that are
So
at
then,
the school?
so there are possibilities for the next round. You know, I don't want to get ahead of myself as
Right.
far as what we could do
Well,
for the next
the
round.
town of Harvard is already almost at $500,000, so,
Mhm.
I mean, there are lots of opportunities, I'm sure, once we look around the town,
Well-
for things that we need that fall.
For
within the-
example, and I don't want to, definitely don't want to get ahead of myself and don't want to make anyone think that this is the direction we would go in, but there's almost a $200,000 request into advisory right now for capital project for the controls for the heating system, because, you know, we don't have good balance for the heating system now that's over there. I'm sure we waste quite a bit of energy. One of the things we might look at is applying for grant money for that.
That's a perfect opportunity.
Mhm.
And the goal ultimately is to save the town carbon emissions, save money. I mean, we're all looking at the bottom line. Because budget is central to this town's top priorities right now, and I
Right.
understand that. But we committed in adopting this green communities to reduce the town's energy use by 20% by 2020, which that new control system will certainly help it be more efficient.
It would-
And that's awesome. So I definitely, so it's going in the right direction.
absolutely going in the right
Dawn.
direction.
And we look forward to more savings. And on the residential side, a spin-off group of Solarized Bolton helped the town install a number of solar installations across the town. I think there are 54 under contract. And because there was such success with that program, Solar Flare ended up donating 5 kilowatt system to the Thurston, Virginia Thurston House over in Harvard, which is a wonderful additional benefit. The Heat Smart program is just starting up, so that little mini split right there on the wall, that right there saves a lot of fuel. We're not using oil to heat and cool this room. So that's what the Heat Smart program is all about, to help residents buy those in bulk. And there may even be an opportunity for public buildings, if we need some of those in other public buildings to get in on that.
When is that going to start?
So they're right now interviewing contractors. So it's green lights go. It's going to start, what month, Sharon? Do you remember? In a few months. I can't remember
good,
when they're
good.
starting to take names. But you can right now go to the website that I have here and sign up to get information on it,
Okay.
if you're interested. Which I'll be I already signed up because we
Yeah.
want to. But we don't, we don't have the time, and we don't want to use your time to
Sure.
read something that we already sent to you. But just to hit on a couple of the items, the welcome packets, we brought one for each of you. Dawn, we can follow up with you, sorry.
It's only 28
If you
years
ever
late.
got one.
I never got one.
This is something that started a few years ago, and we, Bolton Local did not start this, we inherited this initiative. It was started by Mary Boyd and Mary here. And it was the neighbor-to-neighbor program, which sort of fell in our lap once that program,
That's great.
people got really busy. So the work in this is assembling those packets and distributing them to new people in town. It's really appreciated by the people in town when someone walks up from the community and says welcome and hands them this with all town information. So that's a real benefit to the town. Styrofoam recycling, we've been funding that now for several years, working very collaboratively with the DPW. There was talk at our last meeting, it's not even, we just met, we were sitting around this table when it was 7 below zero a couple of Saturdays ago, eating oatmeal and discussing all the ways we can help the town be
And hot
more
chocolate,
sustainable.
right.
And hot chocolate, right, it was so cold, we had to reward people for coming out. And, Ray suggested expanding our styrofoam recycling, like Ayer, if you've gone to Ayer, where they have a horde of volunteers and recycle everything under the sun. So we're doing these things to help the whole community. Ray initiated the Repair Cafe, which has been featured in the Boston Globe and New York Times, and humble Ray here has propagated that program throughout the Commonwealth to at least 11 other communities, and I'll let you speak more about it if you have anything you want to
We
add
have
to
an
it,
event
but
coming up on Saturday, by the way.
on Saturday.
At Florence Sawyer School. And, yeah, so that program, we started about 4 years ago. But it was originally started in the Netherlands by a woman back in 2009. And then she formed a foundation to help other groups like us run repair cafes. So now there are something like 1,400 groups worldwide running them, 200 just in the Netherlands. But the US is behind. We're only 35 or 40. So there's a lot of room for expansion of this program.
That's great.
And about 15 of those are in Massachusetts, and Bolton was the second town in
Bolton was the
Massachusetts.
second town. Pittsfield was
So
the first
Pittsfield was
one
the first.
in Massachusetts.
And Bolton was the second town, so, and that's all good. I mean, keeping stuff out of the landfill, getting your stuff repaired for free.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Anyways, you can read the rest of the list for past and ongoing initiatives, but we
Mhm.
did have a meeting a week ago with Joe Lynch about expanding ways we can support the town to expand recycling and help defray the costs through
Mhm.
our funds to fund some of this. Our initiatives this year, the first on the list was to basically work with the DPW and help the town reduce the use of synthetic fertilizers and herbicides. Joe was very receptive to, frankly, all the initiatives that affected him, he was 100% on board with. He had previously worked with the town of Milton, very closely with their Sustainable Milton group, and helped the town save a lot of money and become more sustainable, so it was great. On a voicemail.
You did, that was very much appreciated.
I said, you knocked it out of the park with this
Yeah.
one.
So- So number one, will you be talking to Park and Rec?
We already had, one of the members of that group is already in Bolton Local. We
Okay.
brought it up, and we will be following up with Park and Rec and the groups that use, community land. Green burial options, this is something, we'll have a program coming up next month, and you can hear it from the experts. It is interesting to a lot of people here in town who live very sustainably, and then when you pass away, you're filled with toxins and put in the cement vault, and
Right.
it's just the antithesis of maybe how you've lived your life. So we just want options here for the community members that really care about that.
Yeah, I went to one of the green burial websites and was reading all that
It's
stuff.
really interesting, and it's definitely, it'll help. And actually, it's a lot less expensive too, frankly. It's less expensive to maintain because they're often in wooded areas, you don't have to mow anything. And anyways, there's lots of goodness that can.
So then the cemetery committee,
The cemetery committee, it would be fabulous if that committee could meet sometime, because for the last year and a
they
half,
happen
we've
to
been
meet.
trying to get
So
that
who's on
group
the
to meet.
cemetery committee?
Well, I would have to check the list, I don't even know off the top of my head.
So that would be great. I mean, Betsy Taylor Kennedy from our group has been leading this initiative,
Mhm.
and.
But I think more,
but-
it's probably a DPW, since that they maintain the.
Well, they maintain it, but
Yeah.
that commission actually,
Would vote.
would be involved.
Yeah, right,
They
right,
just
right.
have to sort of meet to, so that would be.
But they need to vote to allow.
No, our bylaws are already amenable to this, actually.
Ambiguous enough.
So, believe it or not.
So have there been any of these burials that we know of?
Not here in Bolton, but in Arlington, Candace Curry, who came and did a program 2 years ago at the library, which it was one of our most well-attended, besides cheese making, it was our second most well-attended. We packed the library, and Arlington Cemetery is a model in the state, but there are others as well.
Mount Auburn?
Marne Auburn, right, sorry, Marne Auburn Cemetery in Arlington, right. And so we're looking to have a forum come back and talk about that. The Citizens Emergency Response Team, I already have calls out. I talked to the chief, and we'll follow up with the new fire chief at the appropriate time on that one. But there's a lot of interest here in town helping with that. Enabling residents to age in place with grace. This is two of our founding members of Bolton Local. One of them's in their 70s, the other's in their 80s. They both were instrumental in creating the town community garden, and they both are looking at downsizing and having to leave town because there just simply aren't any senior affordable housing options. So that's how this came onto our list, and we do look at a sustainability issue if we're going to be sustainable as a town and take care of our seniors. So we'll work with Erica and whoever else is appropriate to help support that. We know that's in line with the town's goals. And community education and outreach. That's something we've been doing, we will continue to do, and in the spirit of that, that sort of leads us to our recommendation tonight about the letter that was attached to our initiatives. But do you have any questions before we get to that about our initiatives, or?
Nope.
Excellent. So, on behalf of other members of the community who approached Bolton Local last fall and asked us to endorse and support this request that the town adopt a non-binding resolution to support the Paris Climate Accord agreement. We thought it was an excellent idea. It lined up perfectly with what we were already doing, because in essence, the town is already practicing these principles by what we're trying to do already with the green community and reduce our emissions by 20%, which is, you know, is even beyond what other communities are doing. But basically, we sent you letters. We know a number of people from the community did as well. And we just collectively have to apologize that this came up on your agenda after you received all those letters and none of us were aware of it. We didn't show up and we apologize. That was brought to my attention just recently. So here we are, both as Bolton Local and as members of the community, asking you, it is in your right as selectmen representing this town to adopt a non-binding resolution for the town. And basically, that one little paragraph is somewhat cryptic, right? We will adopt, honor, and uphold the commitments of the goals enshrined in the Paris Climate Accord. We will intensify efforts to meet each of our community's current climate goals, which in our case would be the green communities, which we're already doing. Push for new action to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius target, and work together to create a 21st century clean energy environment. I mean, it's basically motherhood and apple pie in a way, but if you want to know more details about what that specifically means, the Paris Climate Accord is an agreement of, it's between 196 nations across the world that call themselves United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. And it's dealing with greenhouse gas emissions. The interesting thing, which I had to actually myself delve in and read more about it, because honestly, just reading that paragraph, I wasn't 100% sure of all the details of what we were asking you to endorse. So I looked into it, and the aim of this whole Paris Climate Accord, there's 3 items. A is holding the increase in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, recognizing that this would significantly reduce the risks and impacts of climate change. That's number 1. That's what that paragraph really means. The second item was basically increasing the ability to adapt the adverse impacts of climate change and foster climate resilience. You know, if we were Boston, do something about building up the seawalls. But we're not Boston. But Boston, in fact, is one of the 350 communities that has already adopted this, as is Acton, Newton. The whole 350 towns and cities across Massachusetts have already done this. And basically, to develop this climate resilience and low greenhouse gas emissions development in a manner that does not threaten food production. You know, we all have to eat, so that's kind of a good thing. And the third thing is basically making finance flows consistent with the pathway towards low greenhouse gas emissions and climate resilient development. So in the agreement, what countries have done is they came up with a little chart that shows you by country. China is in red, the United States is this big, the second largest country that's designated as a country besides this big gray box, it's other. But bottom line is, even these countries, they set their own targets and they try to meet them. We are already doing that with what we're doing with green communities, so we ask in your positions to just simply pledge that we're going to endorse this non-binding resolution. We hope it's not too much to ask, given all the energy that we have put forth trying to help this town be greener. And if you're not comfortable voting tonight because you need to do your own research, that's fine too. Tell us when and we'll get the hordes to come out again. Any questions?
You have any questions, gentlemen?
I support the effort.
Yeah. That's a good idea. So I'll entertain a motion that the Bolton Board of Selectmen support the terms of the 2015 Paris Climate Accord by endorsing the non-binding resolution that was read to us just a moment ago.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'm going to have to disagree. I think that this is kind of outside the purview of what the selectmen should be doing, so.
Second?
Well, Hassan, in one sense, I agree with you, Bob. I mean, we've had other sort of resolutions come before us, and for all of the same reasons. You know, I understand your point.
You know, I think the programs being done in town are very good. I'm glad to see them being accomplished, and I think you're accomplishing a great deal. But I think that the you know, we speak for the whole town, and I understand that it's very clear that there's a large group of people who feel very ardently about this. But I think that as a selectman, I have to, it's a political question, and I don't think that I'm, have the obligation or best serve the townspeople as a whole by supporting this particular article this evening.
Would you want to have an opportunity to mull it over? I'm willing to withdraw my motion to give you a little more time, and we can bring it up at a subsequent meeting.
Sure, sure.
And I think I would prefer to do that and allow to have some additional discussion as opposed to, you know, being a divided board. And you know, you know, like I said, I agree with Bob on one level, and we've had other requests that come up, and we have voted it down. But obviously, this is an important thing. So I think perhaps allow the board a bit more time. I'd rather see us to potentially deliberate and have a unanimous vote on this than perhaps a divided one at this point in time. So in the spirit of trying to get everybody to come together on this, I'll withdraw my motion, and I will have it as an agenda item at a not too distant future meeting. Perhaps we can discuss it, not necessarily discuss whether to endorse or not, but just have a further discussion about it and see if we can change some minds and take it from there.
Okay,
Just
but one thing,
Just a moment.
I was just gonna say, we hope the meeting is not in the too distant future, because if it's not gonna be endorsed, we would like to potentially ask the whole town to vote, and therefore we'd have to get on the warrant in time for May.
Oh, to have sort of like a citizen's petition?
Yeah,
kind of-
absolutely.
Oh, sure.
Because we do feel strongly, so just if.
I certainly have no issue with that. That would.
But if
that
you
would
vote it
certainly
through,
meet
say
all
it's
the-
not
That
well,
might be a better way.
And actually, that
we can
that
see,
actually
yeah.
might be a better way.
That would meet my objections entirely.
Okay.
I wouldn't be unhappy to see that at all.
What I'd like to say is, you know, as a group, you've done amazing work.
Absolutely.
I see this vote as, you know, something that's important to you and as a way to support your efforts. So, you know, that's how I look at it. This is a selectman, is supporting and encouraging, you know, the effort of a bunch of citizen volunteers.
And one doesn't preclude the other. I mean, there could be a selectman's vote and an article
Right.
for the warrant.
Sure.
right.
Right.
I mean,
That's what
your
we're
efforts
looking
have been, you know, fiscally very, you know, responsible, very, you know, you've allowed people in the town to heat their homes or to light their lights using the sun. And, for a reduced price, and that's really amazing. And just the tour, the solar house tours, the things like that, just an incredible effort, and, I do want to support that.
Those efforts were done by people that aren't even in this room as
Yeah, I
well.
know, I
It's
know.
not,
It's
you
an
know, so
amazing
I can't
effort.
take any
Yeah.
credit for
Yeah.
that, because I was involved with that initiative, but.
But it's really about the message we want to give,
Mhm.
that we give our children and that our town cares. I mean, our mantra is think globally, act locally, and this is sending a message that we care, that Bolton cares. And I think
That
that's the
we're-
kind of community we want to be.
That we are thinking globally
Mhm.
and acting locally.
Uh-huh.
So I understand about it being perceived as political, and from our perspective, we all share the same planet, regardless of how we vote,
Right.
so.
But I actually even think, now that we've discussed that having it as an article at the annual town meeting probably might even be a better vehicle.
Well, again, it's a noble resolution, and rather than me or us say that we're doing this on behalf of the entire town, let's put it to the entire town. I'm very comfortable with that.
Mayor?
Mary Chimo, Town Road. Did the selectmen do something like this with the gas pipeline? You passed a resolution?
Yes.
We did.
Yes, we did. Yep.
I mean, are we talking the same sort of thing?
I think it's, while it's in the same light, it's not exactly the same issue. The gas pipeline had much more direct impact to the town if that went through. So I think that's a little bit different. I don't think you can put it exactly on the same plane. But yes, it is, Yes, Dan?
First, I would just take issue with the comment that the gas pipeline had a more direct effect. Global warming will have an effect on every person on this planet. Every person who ever will live in Bolton will be affected by climate change. And so the impact is monstrous. But I just want to understand, first I want to thank the board if I've been correct in understanding that you've committed yourselves to put it on the warrant for the town meeting. Is that correct?
No, we have not taken any action to put it on the warrant. I think probably the more appropriate venue would be for a citizen's petition
To put it on.
to put it on the warrant.
Well, I don't understand then. I seem to be hearing that the selectmen are saying we are not going to take responsibility and we're going to pass it on to the town meeting, but if you're not pledging to put it on the warrant, how do we know it'll ever get to the town meeting? But I'd like to hurry on for a moment beyond that. I mean, that seems to be so evident. But I want to go on beyond that to say that the Board of Selectmen is Bolton's elected officers. And Bolton citizens, in my opinion, deserve to know what their elected officers are doing with respect to the welfare of Bolton's citizens, not to mention the future of the United States and the whole world. This is a democracy which is organized on 3 levels, local, state, and federal. And for it to work, there has to be discussion. And citizens have to engage at all 3 levels. They're not mutually exclusive from one another. And in fact, the national government has disengaged by being the only country out of 196, I think it is, that have signed on to the Paris Climate Accord. And so for the United States to pull out affects every citizen in the United States. Now there are 330 million people in the United States, and so my voice and your voice and your voice, or the voice of anybody in here, is a pretty piddling. And the place that Our founders, our Constitution, set up to give us a voice through, back and forth through all three levels, is our local community. And so I want to know how each of my elected officials stands on this. I would like to know if you're not willing to vote for it, why you're not willing to vote for it, and to say, as I believe I've heard, that this is a noble thing, but you know, it's not for us or something like that. It means absolutely nothing. I can't understand it, and I don't understand. I appreciate Mr. Wasaki's initial engagement and positive outlook on the thing. I'll talk to my next door neighbor Bob when I get a chance, and
he will.
Keep I cannot what his perspective is at all. But, and I would like to know more clearly. I just insulted our next door neighbor. So.
Kathy, I'm used to it, Kathy.
I'm sorry. I would like to know from each of the select members why they will not vote to endorse this tonight. And if they are not going to pledge to put it on the warrant for the town meeting, why they will not do that. And then, perhaps most importantly, I would like to ask that the board hold a public hearing and invite the public to come and make their views known about this.
Well, first of all, I think I've said that I do support it, but I do also understand my colleagues' hesitancy, given that we have had other resolutions up here, and to one respect and one point of view, we don't necessarily are the group that's going to dictate what the town at large is either going to support or not support. Having a citizen's petition and putting it on the warrant for the town meeting to allow the citizens to make that decision is a perfectly legitimate and valid route to go. That was done with Camp Virginia, and I think having a citizen's petition for Camp Virginia, as opposed to the selectmen just saying, sure, let's hold a special town meeting and not have any discussion, was probably not the right way to go, and I think the way it went was probably a much better venue for it to go. I suggested that as opposed to taking a vote tonight, perhaps we have a further discussion to perhaps change Mr. Sikansky's mind and whether or not he'd be willing so that we have a unanimous vote on this. But having a citizen's petition by no means lessens the will of the town and the citizens, because ultimately it's the citizens of the town that makes the decisions here, especially on spending and everything else. And that fact seems to get lost a lot of times, where, you know, just because we decide not to decide to vote on something, that we're derelict in our duties. Most everything in this town is decided by the citizens of this town. Spending money, building a library, doing a public safety building, paving roads, all this other stuff, making improvements to 117 where we have to spend money, are all done and decided by the citizens, as opposed to the selectmen dictating what's to be done and not to be done. So I take exception with your comments, David. There's no one here that doesn't agree with this. At least I don't. I fully agree with the Paris Climate Accord. The fact that we supported the green community, supporting initiatives and efforts to cut down on our use of electricity. I'm one of the 54 families that put solar panels on my home to make a contribution. So I do take exception with that, and I would prefer, as opposed to having continuing discussion, and of course, in this meeting, there is no agenda item to discuss putting an article on the warrant, so we really can't discuss that because it's not an agenda item. So we really cannot take a vote on that tonight because it's not here. We can put that on as an agenda item for a future meeting, but we really cannot discuss and take action or vote on something that is not an agenda item. So we really can't do that tonight anyway. But my preference would be, as opposed to trying to force a decision tonight, let's put it on the agenda again, let's have an additional discussion, and perhaps at the end of the day, if we can't have a unanimous vote, I see no reason why putting it on the agenda or on the warrant for the May annual town meeting, regardless of whether we sponsor the article or whether it's a citizen's petition, both are equally valid and equally have the same merit. Yes, sir.
You probably realize that...
Could you please identify yourself?
Jim Cavallo, Pine Woodrow. I think you're aware that there is a deadline for citizens to submit a petition to put an article on the town meeting warrant sometime, I believe, the 17th of March. Would you say tonight that you'll have another agenda item to discuss this before that time?
Oh, certainly, and it doesn't require even us having an agenda item. A citizen's petition is something
No,
where...
The question about whether the selectmen...
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Will you schedule it at the next meeting?
We'll see what we have on the agenda, and if we can do that, absolutely.
And will you do it before the 17th of March?
Yes, I said we'll probably try to do it the next meeting we have. But again, that doesn't preclude you folks from doing a citizen's petition.
I have a citizen petition with me tonight with more than 10 required signatures. All the people that signed it agreed that they would not submit it for the town meeting warrant if the selectmen would pass a resolution on behalf of the town.
Okay.
How long is the warrant looking?
We haven't done the first draft yet. I don't think it's quite as bad, or bad's not the right word. It's not quite as long as it's been in past years. At the moment, I don't think we're looking at a 2-night meeting. I think we're looking at a 1-night meeting. My goal, my unstated goal, has been to have the first draft of the warrant done before the February 8th meeting, which is we're meeting the 8th and the 22nd in February, and traditionally I'd like to have the first draft done so advisor and the selectmen can see it by the first selectmen's meeting in February.
Okay.
One other comment, if I may.
Yes,
I'd just like to be on record as saying that I appreciate very much the desire to have a unanimous vote, but that's certainly not necessary, and the country runs by majority rule, and so I sure as heck would rather see a 2-to-1 vote than no vote. And I don't understand what Mr. Chairman is saying or not saying, but nevertheless, I'm going away from tonight's meeting very unclear with respect to everybody except Stan Wasaki as to how they view this terribly important issue.
Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you for your work.
Yes,
Thank you
very
very
much.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for your voicemail. That was very nice.
All right, next up on our agenda is a discussion on future location of Board of Selectmen's meetings. This is an agenda item that I requested to put on the meeting this evening. It was voted some time ago, previous makeup of the board, to move the meetings from the Board of Selectmen meeting room in the town hall to here. I think over the course of time, a couple of things have occurred. One, the parking for this facility is not as great, wonderful as it is at Town Hall, and we've had issues even with small crowds of getting people available to park. Second, despite the wonderful efforts of Bolton Access Television, the sound and visual quality has never quite come up to speed as to what we had back in the Selectmen's room. And thirdly, and I think probably most important, and the argument that I made when it was voted 2-to-1 and I was the lone vote, is that we have 2 town employees here, the town administrator and Linda Day, one of our secretaries, and obviously always present here. We've had more than one occasion where things have come up where we actually needed to have either materials or information or make copies or files that were required to conduct business here that we're actually back at the other building. And there's been an inconvenience where we've either had not been able to continue that particular piece of business. I know in one instance we were dealing with some contract negotiations, and it was suggested that, you know, one individual head off at 9 o'clock and they'll be back by 10:30 to continue the meeting, which is really not acceptable. And also the fact that, you know, Linda is required to bring a tremendous amount of material from the town hall to here, where that material would be available to her if needed, if we had the meeting. And we've conducted the Board of Selectmen meeting in the Selectmen's meeting room for many, many years, and that's why that room has the title Board of Selectmen meeting room on it. So I'm recommending that for all those reasons, and for really no really good reason why we moved it here, that I'm suggesting that we reconsider and move the Board of Selectmen meetings back to the Selectmen's meeting room at Town Hall. And if we do have occasion, as we had in the past, where we have the need for a larger audience of folks who might want to participate in a particular meeting, that we have the meeting here, as we had done in the past. But I'm looking to move the meetings by default back to the Board of Selectmen's meeting room at Town Hall. And that's why I put that on the agenda.
Yeah, so I was one of the people who supported moving the Board of Selectmen meetings to this room. And I think we've outgrown the Board of Selectmen meeting room at Town Hall. I counted the chairs in there. It seats about 20, 21, and that's not including the board members at the table. This room seats 30, and as you saw tonight, we had, at the beginning, we had about 26 people in the room, not including the 5 of us. So I think, you know, just as a matter of function, professionalism, democracy, it's important to have a space, and also safety, it's important to have a space that can accommodate everybody. At Town Hall, what you would have is, you would have the people who arrive first getting the chairs, and all the rest of the people standing out in the hall, kind of gathering, and sometimes they might be there for a half hour, but sometimes things go over and they might be there for an hour and a half. And the door has to stay open, and there are really no chairs out there, so the door has to stay open, you know, per regulation, so they can't really, they have to be quiet. Sometimes they're not. It just, you know, it doesn't seem to work. And, you know, just in terms of safety, I would say, I would definitely, you know, before we take this vote, I would want, you know, the fire chief to look at, you know, how many people really can safely be in the Town Hall Board of Selectmen meeting room, and how many can be gathered in the hall. I think this is a much safer site. We have a door that goes directly outdoors, an exit, and it really allows like an ebb and flow of people throughout the meeting that I think is more conducive to our business.
I've been a selectman for going on 14 years, and we never really had any issue with that room in 14 years. And to all your points about, you know, needing space, we've always, when this room became available, used this room when we knew we would have a larger crowd. So, you know, the decision to move the meeting locale to here, I think, was done more on a whim than anything else. But having been a selectman for as many years as I have, that room has functioned extremely well. Plus, I think mainly for, you talk about convenience, it's these individuals who work every day we are inconveniencing the most. And I think that argument was totally ignored by yourself and your previous colleague. And I think it's a shame that you know, the burden is being placed on these people
when that room was perfectly adequate and continues to be perfectly adequate as a meeting room.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that's come up has been that we haven't had a printer here so that documents could be changed, during the meeting that we were going to sign. So, portable printers, they're very small, they're very affordable. I talked to Don about looking into that as a possibility. I think that's been the biggest issue in terms of convenience for us as a board and for Linda. So, I think we should invest in one of those. I don't think the police chief has looked seriously at that room. You go to the library and there's a plaque and it says this room is safe for so many people. It's not a safe condition over there when it's full. And we can't know how many people are going to show up. We don't send out an RSVP, and nobody should have to wait in the hall during like a public meeting like this. So this room was perfect tonight. We had 25, 26 people came in when we opened the door. There were a few extra chairs that worked perfectly. We wouldn't have known if we were at the other place that many people would have shown up, and we would have had, at least 10 people standing up in the hall. And that, I don't think that's democratic. I don't think it works. I don't think it's safe.
Mr. Skansky, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I have a few things. I think this space it's open. It has more chairs than are available in the town hall. However, parking is very difficult here. And last year during the winter, before I was a selectman, I was witness to somebody slipping and falling in the middle of 117 as they were coming into one of these meetings. Now, fortunately, there was no traffic at that particular time, but if it had been drizzly or if there'd been some bad weather or something like that, I shudder to think what might have happened. So I understand there's no safety issue in here. There's a safety issue getting here. And if you can't walk here, it's very difficult to get to because you've got such a long way to go, particularly during the winter. In the town hall, it is small. It is inconvenient. And I remember the first time I attended a selectmen's meeting, to walk in there with that small room and, almost everybody who goes into that meeting has been there before. So you're the newbie and everyone's looking at you. And it's very uncomfortable to be a new person walking into a crowded meeting over there. And the absolute terror that goes through everybody in the room if someone starts coughing or sneezing, because there's such close proximity to everybody is worth considering too. Now, I think there are some other venues available in the town. They're not hooked up to the live TV. I would like to see us consider moving to those areas, but that's not going to be settled tonight. However, primarily for safety reasons, primarily because the parking is available and makes it more accessible to citizens, I think we should move back to town hall.
Yes, sir.
E.J. Herbison. If so many people show up and they can't all get seats and hear the meeting, will the meeting at that point be moved over here? It just seems if someone shows up for the meeting, they should be allowed to hear it. And if they can't because the room's small, you should immediately move to a larger room.
That probably would not necessarily be practical, but I think we've done pretty well in the past based upon agenda items that are listed within the meeting that's published. We have a pretty good sense of whether or not there's going to be a large crowd or not. And when those agenda items have come up, we have moved to another venue. And when this building was available, we did move here. would make the meeting over here or someplace else where it would accommodate more individuals. But for a good number of the selectmen's meetings, there aren't agenda items that are going to attract large groups of people. But when they do, we've accommodated and we have moved to a different locale to accommodate that.
I'm not sure you have my name, but EJ Herbison, Long Hill Road.
Yes.
Would you have assumed there would be a crowd for this meeting?
Yes, I would have assumed there'd be a crowd here, especially with the Bolton local. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I was not surprised to see the number of people here. But in many cases, we have agenda items where, you know, we have one person or two people come in, they come in and out, they know roughly when they're going to be called. Not everybody comes at 7 o'clock for an agenda item that's at 9:30. I mean, if they want to do that, that's fine, but, you know, typically people will ebb and flow as time comes on. You know, it's broadcast live for the most part, so if they have cable TV, they can see roughly when they may be on or not. So, as I said, it's worked well in the past, and we have not had many instances where it has not. And, you know, I think Bob Sikansky my colleague Bob brings up some good points in terms of parking availability and safety, which that there is definitely a problem here.
Well, in the spirit of coming together, you know, I would like, before we vote on this, to have the fire chief look at the room and assess, you know, what that space is built for. I don't think that's been done. People have just accepted that that's the selectmen meeting room and that's the way it's always been, but I think a critical eye needs to look at how many people can be in that room and how many people can hang out in the hallway to really truly assess this question.
No, I don't think so, because quite frankly, then what you're saying is that, you know, town hall is not a safe building for any meeting, because that room is not just used for selectmen's meetings, it's used, the advisory committee meets in that room. So are you making the statement that the town hall is not safe for anyone?
No, I'm saying every room has a limit, and it's never been assessed. And I don't know why, but it just hasn't, because it's a tradition. So as somebody newer to the board, I look at things differently, and I think we should have it assessed as a safety thing. Even if you vote to go back there, we still need to have the room assessed.
There's nothing in this room that tells me that it's been assessed, and yet it's been fine to meet in.
Right, so the question's coming up, we're in a bigger room, there are aisles on both sides, there's an exit to the outdoor.
The issue here is, you've been happy in a room that hasn't been assessed.
It's a bigger room, so it feels safer.
It hasn't been assessed.
Imagine, you know, 28 people trying to get out of the Board of Selectmen meeting room if there were a fire.
It has multiple exits.
Well, the person who's sitting next to the door is blocking it, so I think it's worth having it assessed.
But to Bob's point, this room hasn't been assessed either.
Yeah, this one should be as well.
With them.
All public meeting rooms should be. I think the one at the library is. They have a number. The auditorium at the school has a number.
Well, I don't necessarily agree that it needs to be assessed. It's an existing room. It has worked fine for years. We haven't had any major catastrophe in that room, nor in any other room.
Just some votes.
Just some votes. True.
Just some votes.
True. So I think we're making too much of this particular issue. Well, I think
I will make a motion to move nominal meetings of the Board of Selectmen back, have the town hall be the nominal meeting room of the Board of Selectmen.
And would you also like to add to that motion that, as we have done in the past, if we feel that there's an agenda item or items that we believe that will attract more than potentially the capacity of that room, that we will
Yeah,
as in the past, move it to another venue,
That's-
whether it be this building or some
Yes,
other?
yes, that's what I meant by using the word nominal.
Okay.
You know, it's the default meeting room unless there's a
Okay.
special
right.
topic that's going to require a larger space.
All right, so you made the motion?
I did make the motion.
Do I have a second? I will second that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it, thank you very much. Next up on the agenda is update on the new police cruiser. Gentlemen, please come down. How are you this evening? Chief, how are you?
Everybody else is well.
Well.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
How are you?
Well, see you again.
Thank you very much. Dan Keller. Nice to meet you.
All right, well, Dan introduced himself. This is the fleet manager, Officer Dan Keller.
Fleet manager.
Fleet manager. He's got the wings. It's all good. So the latest update on the cruiser. Once the quotes came in and a vendor was chosen, we ran into the first roadblock. And the first roadblock was, and I'm sure on the news, it was pretty popular, that carbon monoxide was getting into the Ford Explorers, specifically the police model, and officers were passing out, crashing, and it made a mess. So when we were alerted to that, I had to sideline the whole Ford Explorer fleet. So all 4 of them, I had to put them sidelined. I couldn't put the officers out to drive around
Right.
and possibly hurt themselves or hurt somebody in the public. It was a huge safety problem. So Ford came out. I actually had an engineer come right to us after they went to, Auburn? Which if you remember?
Yes, Auburn.
There was one that hit the news, I think it was an Auburn officer crashed.
Yeah.
Ford went right out. I called Auburn, I said, Auburn, who did you talk to? I got the engineers right out. Tried to resolve it the best we could. We pretty much were told, put tape, put glue, do whatever you can. And the directive was, after we got that all sealed up, was to drive around and leave the windows down. Okay. Not practical and not a safe environment. So when they were responding to calls, that's when all the carbon monoxide coming from the exhaust would get sucked right back into the cabin, because aftermarket holes that were drilled and replacing gaskets on the nuts and bolts, the aftermarket person wasn't doing it. Plus, there was some things from Ford that weren't tight. So they weren't airtight, they weren't watertight. So the exhaust was getting in. First roadblock. Really haven't gotten a total assurance that the problem's fixed. So I sent him on a mission, find me something else other than the Ford Explorer. There's not a lot out there. The only comparable item, because there's no other SUV on the market that's police pursuit rated. I can't put them in a Dodge Durango, whatever the Chevy model is. They just can't do it, because I can't have them racing around going to calls and not have a car that's set up for it. So he came back with a Tahoe at 60,000 and a Dodge Charger all-wheel drive that just puts us right back into we went to the higher car, and just going places, they rip stuff off all the time. So they used my car and the lieutenant's car, Dodge Chargers, for several days, and I had to fix my car. Not saying that it was, intentional, but doing their normal stuff, driving around, they ripped off all the stuff that had been repaired. I don't think they did as much damage to his because his car is a little higher. So the lieutenant and I took the Fords home just because, we don't drive as much as the duty car. So we would take those home and deal with that. So once that was all working out, Ford F-150, we got the announcement that they were going to produce pursuit-rated pickup trucks. So we got a quote, and the first thing I did, because we were going to advisory and planning my budget, I said, let's get an F-150. Bigger, better on gas, miles per gallon, better horsepower, and just a sturdier vehicle for police work and doing it in Bolton. Okay, a farm town, we go off-road all the time, big snowstorms, it's a practical vehicle for us. So I went in, I gave a great sales job, Stan helped me, he was very good with the Ford data, and the advisory agreed to bumping up my FY19 line item for the cruiser. So we went from 40 up to 47, I think it was. It's about a $5,000 difference, just for the base price, and then adding a few, the lights and siren, everything goes up, and it's just a few more little gadgets that we put in. So that went up a couple grand too. So that's where we left it. And then, when all things settled down, now there's no cars on the lot at MHQ. 12, 16, 18 weeks for production before they see any more cars. So now I don't have any Ford Explorers to buy. So that's where I am right now. I don't have anything ordered. I've got to wait till these get back into restock.
Right.
An item. And the good part is the F-150, that'll be produced about a month after probably MHQ starts getting the Explorers. And it might be April, May before they start hitting the lots.
So you're here tonight to discuss the possibility of, instead of the Explorer, to go with an pursuit-rated F-150.
Yes,
As you discussed at the advisory committee.
That would be a great option. I'm not looking for any more money. I would take the line item I have for the cruiser, and if there's some money in the cruiser supply fund for putting lights on, replacing lights and all that, I can make it work with what I have to jump over to the F-150.
So this is a four-door pickup truck?
Four-door pickup truck, EcoBoost 6-cylinder.
Pictures for you too.
Oh, he brought the whole guide and everything.
Just to get an idea, this is just their brochure images.
One way or another, you're gonna have to buy something before the fiscal year's up.
I would like to spend that money before the end of the fiscal year.
Otherwise, it's a whole new...
Yeah, I'm not sure I can encumber that money over to the next fiscal year to buy a car, but...
Right.
Right, it needs to be bought.
So I've got to spend that money now.
Okay, so
Before
if
July.
you were to buy it this year, does that, now, my recollection from this advisory committee meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you were gonna buy that, see how it worked out, but it wasn't necessarily, I want to change the fleet to these.
I think I got kind of directed in that direction by the advisory committee.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Honestly, when a new tool comes into our profession that's, better,
Yeah.
if there's better guns, if there's better boots, we go out and...
You want to standardize on
We
it.
want to get, yes, and then now, I've got an F-150, if it works, and as we said, we test it for the first one, if it looks good for the first 6 months before I go and have him go out for quotes, we say yes or no to an F-150 for the FY20. So
FY19.
Well, 19, I'm gonna have it, so what I'm saying is, use it for 6 months, and then if it looks good, and it passes all tests and it doesn't break down and blow up, then I go for the next fiscal year and try to get another one.
Okay, but where I am is, you're looking to use this year's fiscal 18 money
Yep.
to possibly buy a pickup truck.
Yes.
But you were talking to advisory about fiscal 19.
That is correct. That was for that budget.
That was for that
Right,
budget.
47,000 for that budget.
Right. So you would buy one this May and you'd buy one next December?
No, I could buy one in May, and then
Yes.
July 1st, I could buy another one.
Yes.
Because I'll have new money for...
That's my point. Yeah, so you'd be buying two of them back to back, basically,
Sure.
as opposed to considering going back down to a...
It kind of throws the test phase out, yes. That wasn't really, I wrote it down, I agreed to it, but honestly, we're sitting here waiting for an Explorer anyways.
I understand that. I'm
And-
just trying to get the whole picture, wrap my
Certainly,
head around the whole
certainly.
picture.
So if I have to wait another month and live with what we have now,
Yeah.
because I have to replace one of the Dodges, and
Right.
I've got to take one out, take the Explorer out and make that the admin car, and bring the next car in. So it's a little bit of time. I'm not asking for any more money, and I just want to see if we can just try to go with the bigger truck.
So towns around us, what is their experience been?
Absolutely, yeah.
Sure, go right ahead.
So, I mean, there's, Berlin has a data pickup. The generation prior, the existing, if you will, it's what's called a special service vehicle. So you have 3 different types of vehicles. You've got the consumer versions that you go down to the dealership and buy an F-150. The special service vehicle is more beefed up, if you will. That is, things like the cooling system, more an idle, things that protect it to idle for long periods of time. Not so much tuned to the regard of pursuit rated, which actually suspension, things like that improve handling, high heat for the brakes, calipers, heavy duty. Lots of things on the vehicle are brought up to heavy duty standards. So, for example, Berlin is currently operating with a special service vehicle, as any other town or city around that you see has a pickup truck is doing that currently. So their function necessarily for frontline, that's up to the administrators of the town, obviously, if they're going to utilize that for frontline or not. Chief is adamant on using a pursuit-rated vehicle, which is ideal for liability reasons, safety reasons, testing reasons. I mean, it's just the way to go, really. Town of Hudson has a special service F-150 as well, and it's more on the utility aspect of the department. I'll give you an example. I think it's Auburn PD. They have to plow the officers plow their parking lot with an F-250. Leicester Police Department supervisors drive the F-150 they have, the special service vehicle. But this vehicle, the goal, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to be just purely a frontline vehicle, utilized as a frontline vehicle.
So it sounds like these other towns have one. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a few towns that have it, yes. And I actually saw the Berlin chief on Tuesday, and as long as he can get the advisory and get the budget, he's going to go with the F-150.
I think the distinction here is that up until this coming summer, there's no pursuit-rated cars available.
That's correct.
So you even if you had the money, you wouldn't wanted to turn your whole fleet over to those things because they weren't pursuit-rated.
Exactly, because we're just buying a utility vehicle.
So what's the difference between pursuit? I mean, the engine is the same in all these 3 different gradations?
Sure. So yes, you can go and buy a special service vehicle and get it's an EcoBoost motor. And honestly, they actually don't beef up this particular engine. If you look at the specs, it's heavy duty enough as is in the truck. So that's already met its own standards for that, including police standards. But they do fine tune things such as the brakes. Brakes are much larger than your consumer vehicle, even larger than a special service vehicle, to handle that high heat during pursuit. And remember, pursuit doesn't mean we're going to go get in pursuits. That's not, we avoid those at all costs, right? But the thing is if, it's the needs, for example, the standards that are set, it is set by individual automobile manufacturers. There's no federal standard on this. So Ford has its set of standards in regards to pursuit rating. It has to be able to get over a certain type of curb height. It has to be able to turn a corner at a certain rate of speed without having too much body roll. Things like that. They are safety standards that the company stands behind. Ford is king when it comes to police vehicles. There's nobody that sells more police vehicles in the United States than Ford.
So there's still the sedan, the Ford sedan. There's the SUV, and now there's the pickup truck.
Okay.
And so if I remember correctly, the sedan was $38,000. The SUV was 40, and it sounds like this pickup truck is going to push us up to 47. So it's adding almost 10,000 to the bill. So it's, I don't know if it's something we want to replace the whole fleet with, because it is much more expensive. Other than your car, how many cars are in the fleet?
Well, there's four frontline vehicles we have currently, and those are all the Explorers, and we have the Chief's car and Lieutenant's car. That's
4, 6.
Yep,
So what's the difference in clearance between the Explorers and the F-150?
Precisely, I'll tell you, it's 6.5 inches clearance on the Explorer and 9.4 inches on the pickup truck. As far as the sedan, I want to say it's about at least an inch lower. Remember, the SUV is built on the Ford Taurus chassis. It's a unibody construction built on that same chassis, so it's essentially your tire height is actually bringing it up slightly more. And I just joke, I say in Bolton, clearance is king, and we've proven that time and time again. The older Chargers, the silver Chargers that we had, the Dodge Chargers, were a higher clearance. Your car, they dropped it. They actually brought it down, and we have learned a lot of lessons with that when that car was on the front line. So, you know, clearance is absolutely king in this town, and every shift I work, I mean, just simple driveways. I'm not even saying going off road.
The town hall driveways, yeah.
Until you get a Humvee, though, you're not gonna ever have enough clearance for everything.
That's true. But then also, this is gonna be a true four-wheel drive vehicle now, instead of an all-wheel drive. I can remember an instance, the first week we had the Explorer, I actually had to call A1 to tow me out of the parking lot of Twin Springs, because there was fresh snow, and I said, let's see what this can do. So I drove it to the parking lot that had been plowed, and with less than a foot of snow, I got stuck. So the all-wheel drive, good to a point, but when you get it into the snow, forget it. So, not too many people know it, now everybody does, and, sorry.
We do have several examples of that, actually, of these vehicles getting stuck. You know, and something to think about is, I'm kind of a geek, I read Motor Trend a lot and things like that, and Ford Motor Company, and I don't work for them, but Ford Motor Company, what they do is, right now, they're actually eliminating a lot of cars. As a whole, they're essentially putting all their focus on SUVs and trucks. Example, the Fusion. Fusion is essentially supposed to disappear as a vehicle, is what I've read recently. Because they're just not making money on these vehicles, and everyone's shifting towards SUVs. So that, I mean, just as an example, I mean, this is kind of the general trend in our profession. I mean, I have a list of pros in regards to what good the truck could do for us in a lot of ways. You know, in 2018, I think there's a lot of newer reasons, and you turn the TV on, you see a lot of things going on in the world where we have a lot more, whether it's the weather or just, you know, extreme circumstances, extreme calls. We're starting to see that the need for a truck is becoming far greater.
Oh, I had an F-150 for 18 years. I can certainly vouch for the versatility, and especially in bad weather, over a car.
And just something I wanted to add to in regards to kind of a cost benefit in regards to value. I know we talked about the cost going up. An F-150, this is based upon what's called the FX4 chassis. It's a very heavy-duty truck as is. I would argue all day long it's far more heavy-duty than any Explorer or Police Interceptor vehicle. So as far as length of time of the vehicle, and then potential, you know, recycling the vehicle for other usage in town, per se, down the road, maybe the end of its police life, if you will, is very strong, because it's built to last like that.
I'm struggling over, I guess I don't really understand how the town is going to be better off with this vehicle. And so I'm asking my other brethren selectmen here, is there a way to say okay to this, but the next purchase has got to be reviewed by us so that, you know, we've got to essentially buy into changing the fleet as opposed to, you know, I can buy into the utility aspect of this, and that it's good to have a vehicle like this that's pursuit rated. But I'm not sure I'm sold on it's necessary to have all the frontline vehicles have all of these capabilities. And so I don't know how to, you know, get one of these and then revisit the decision sometime next year, next fiscal year.
Well, actually, I think we really shouldn't necessarily be second guessing what we think the police department needs. I mean, without any other argument, I think, you know, there are, one, other towns are adopting this, and two, yeah, this is a much more versatile vehicle, and I think in general, having owned one, you know, and the arguments that the chief and everyone else is making, that this certainly would be
certainly not a bad choice for a vehicle. And I think, given the fact that you gotta remember, for 8 hours a day, this is a policeman's home. I mean, they're living in this vehicle for 8 hours or longer. And I think us lay folks, certainly can appreciate, obviously, this costs more, but I think we also need to look at what, looking at the experience and the recommendation of what our chief and the officers are saying, and the fact that, we're not sitting in the vehicle for 8 hours a day. And, it may not necessarily, even with the SUV, they are in it for 8 hours a day, but not necessarily pursuing people for 8 hours a day or driving through snow. But I think we should value their recommendations. And, I don't think that by doing this now, they may find that, it works well, but maybe we don't need everything to be, a pickup truck. I mean, I have no problem with if it proves to be as value as it is, to move the fleet to a pickup truck. Because I think also one of the arguments that was made in discussing with the advisory committee that this probably will be a little more durable, and while we may not necessarily want to keep them in service longer, probably the repair costs might be a little bit less during the life cycle of this vehicle. So while we're spending a little bit more money now, we may be spending a little bit less in terms of repair that maybe we wouldn't be spending. But buying one now, and then, advisory has approved the money for a second one, so you get two, and then you see, well, is it really that great? Maybe it's a mixed fleet. Maybe it's some of these, and maybe it's some SUVs.
No, I understand the advisory approved it, but I think they approved it with the understanding that that was going to be the test one. So that's why I don't think it's.
But the thing is, yes, that was the premise, but now we have another set of circumstances, and I can't see that we'll go. It's a wrong choice to do this. I don't see it's a wrong choice at all. No.
Even if we have two to test, we get the test, and if it, like you said, if it stops there, then we have two of the same vehicles, and then we may go back to the Explorer.
Because this one's not going to cost us any more than an Explorer, so it's not a monetary thing. So if these guys think that they can get value and use out of that, who am I to second guess that? And they get a second one, and let them do their thing. And if it turns out that it's great, then fine. We continue to replace the Explorers with these. If it's not, then maybe we have a mixed fleet.
If I may, it seems to me that the choke point is FY20. We know we're getting one for FY19. To me, it's a logical decision to go this route for FY18. And then, when it's time for the next budget round in FY20, certainly advisory is going to remember that this was a test. Everyone's going to remember that it was a test. And the chief's going to need to come back and say, this is how the trucks fared versus the SUV. And then I think we're at a decision point there. And maybe, as to Stan's point, maybe we do end up with a mixed fleet. Or if we're delighted with the results, we go on with the.
But I wonder if advisory would have agreed to get one in 19 if they know the chief was going to get one in 18.
Yeah, I mean, what I've noticed in local towns is that they have one of these, and it's just to kind of fill out their capabilities. So I haven't noticed that they're going half or all with pickup trucks.
Well, the problem with that is they haven't been pursuit rated.
Right.
So myself, I would never put an officer in there unless this was just a service vehicle for you to go to class and come back. It would never be a frontline cruiser.
Right, because the truck, the F-150 that Berlin and Hudson have isn't this vehicle.
But their officers are using those.
Not as pursuit vehicles.
No, I know, but they're using them in their day-to-day operations. I've seen them. So, on a shift, one of the officers is driving the pickup truck, and so, you know, I think starting with one, I don't think, and evaluating that is, I think, prudent. I don't think there's any rush to like get two.
I do know, just a side note, that there's been extreme interest from talking to the vendors as far as this coming out. Ford is getting kind of the door knocked down from police departments nationwide, is what I understand. Because of now, this is, I mean, historically, this is a new thing, we're having a pursuit rated pickup truck, so.
And Berlin will have 2 by next fiscal year if he's approved. So, yes, no.
Yeah, I mean, who knows where it goes, and, you know, but it seems like this is a demand that is being met, you know, by Ford at this time, that, you know, I know personally I've inquired several times to NHQ, and they're like, everyone's banging the door down trying to get this thing.
Chief, let me ask you a question. The officers that are on duty, they're in pursuit-rated vehicles, is that correct?
They are.
Okay. You would not have an officer on duty in a non-pursuit rated vehicle in this town?
Not on patrol.
Okay, and that's what we have. So this is what this is being used for. So the argument that an officer in Berlin or Hudson is driving one of these things, they're not an officer that is patrolling the town in a pursuit rated vehicle. This is a completely different situation here. So you really cannot make that comparison here. And most towns probably don't have more than one because this has not been available yet.
And it'd be crazy to buy a fleet of them if they're not pursuit rated.
Exactly.
You just can't do the same type of work.
Exactly. So, I mean, the fact that it's not going to cost anything, it's not going to cost. Whose phone is that? Could you please turn your phone off? Thank you. The fact that we're not talking about any request for an increase in funds, I see no reason why, you know, if the chief wants to pursue this option, I think we should just let him do it.
Yeah, there's no increase in funds for this first one. He's finding money somewhere else in his budget, but the second one is an increase.
Yes,
just because advisory approved it doesn't mean it's not an increase.
I didn't say it wasn't an increase. This one is not.
Yeah,
Advisory has approved the funds to purchase a second one, or the one that we talked about. So we should not even discuss that because that's already been approved. It's this one where it's not costing the town any more money. And if it's a vehicle that the chief is interested in purchasing, and I see that we can get a lot of value out of it, I don't see any reason why we should be second-guessing a decision.
Right, so you're proposing instead of the SUV, which you came to us earlier, you'd like to buy a pickup truck?
Yes, instead of the Explorer, get a pickup truck with the same funds that I have right now.
We'll just focus on that and not next year's car. That seems okay to me.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask to clarify, this first pickup truck that you're going to get, are you going to get a pursuit rated one?
That's why we're putting in for it, yes.
So
it is
you're going
pursuit
to
rated.
wait until that's available?
That's correct.
Okay, which is going to be this summer?
March is the production, and April, May, it'll be done, supposed
Okay,
to have it
so
done.
you're not going to compromise with the special service vehicle, it's not pursuit rated? You're
Oh, no,
going
no,
for the
no.
pursuit rated?
Yes.
Pursuit rated,
Thank you
yes.
very much.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right, so
We're good.
I think we're good. You know, I have to, we did receive a letter today from Vice President of the Local 286 of NASCOP. Hank is back in the room. And let me just read that. Just as in support, dear Mr. Wysocki, addressing it to the chairman, it's our understanding that NASCOP AFL-CIO Local 286, an agenda item on the January 18, 2018 meeting includes an update on the new police cruiser. The union, Local 286, opines our beliefs that the choice of cruiser rests with the chief of police, while the funding of said purchase should reside with the then current practice of the town of Bolton. using such funds to purchase. We further believe that the chief understands our operational necessities, be it a sedan, SUV pickup, the equipment and the accessories necessary to complete our mission and remain safe while completing it. He also realizes this vehicle is our office for 8 hours a day, 24/7, 365. We are proud of the vehicle's equipment and standards the cruisers represent for the town of Bolton and for our members, and respectfully request that you allow the chief to utilize his discretion on the type of vehicle, color, equipment, graphics, tools, electronics, etc., which was submitted.
Before you wrap, I would respectfully request that you memorialize, since it's a change in plan, that you vote, that you actually have a vote on the record to do that.
Yes. I'll make a motion before, I'm not finished with this, but before we move forward, I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation of the chief of police to move forward with his replace his purchase of an Explorer SUV, given the circumstances that he outlined, with a pursuit-rated Ford F-150 vehicle.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Thank you. But while we're on that subject, and since the vehicle has not been ordered, I do want to bring up one other thing which was also mentioned in regard to this letter, which includes the color. As you recall, some time ago, due to a recommendation by one selectman and voted on by another, there was a decision made 2-to-1 to change the color of the fleet from black to white to what it currently is. And I believe we had talked before, during and after, and my understanding is that your preference as chief would have preferred to leave the color of the vehicle as they are now, which is the color black with the graphics that we have. Is that still your opinion?
It is still my opinion. Keep it the same as generic with the other vehicles, yes.
Okay.
And change the graphics. We would obviously take that information that you guys presented to us, that if the graphics weren't bright enough, weren't visible enough, we would improve that to make that look better. But yes, myself and I think the overall majority of the police department still want to keep the vehicle black.
Black, okay. Because I believe that the discussion point coming up with that really had nothing to do, as far as I remember, with any large number of complaints, but it was originated by a former member of the Board of Selectmen. And as you know, I did not support that change. And to your point, I believe you've indicated that, you know, if not all of the members of the Bolton Police Department would have preferred to keep the color the way it was, and you were not necessarily in agreement that the color of the vehicles change.
That's correct. That's like putting a white uniform on Dan and a blue one on me. It really, to keep it would take 6 years to change the whole fleet out. And I don't think that's necessary for the town of Bolton, with the residents of this town. Black is not a scary vehicle. White is more prominent in Boston, Lowell, Lawrence, all high crime areas. And they're trying to improve their community relations. I don't need to do that. We've got very good community relations with the people that live in this town. And the people I've talked to all are in complete disagreement to change this car to white. This is town residents, this is co-workers, this is people of chiefs and sergeants that have all come up to me and said, you know, what's up? So my opinion is to keep it the same and don't change it.
So this is, you know, this is surprising and kind of, you know, a rewriting of some of the facts. I went down to where they paint, and it's down in Marlborough Hudson. What is it? MHQ. Took pictures of different vehicles and sent them to Don. Don passed them to you. So there were vehicles that were white with blue stripes, as our vehicles used to be, and there were vehicles that were black with white doors, or the opposite, blue with white doors. And the reason I did that is because our vehicles, you know, for some reason, it seemed like the design of the vehicles, to me, you know, got a little, you know, it seemed more that it wasn't doing it for kind of clear graphics. It was like to make the vehicles look cool. So we had black vehicles with silver, like Bolton and identification. So black and gray, not very easy to read. I think some of them had gold and black. So it was kind of like a car show aesthetic seeped into the police cruisers. So I sent those pictures to Don. He sent them to you. You came back with a recommendation. I didn't say, I want to see a white car. You came back and you looked at the history of Bolton police cars and you're like, yeah, we used to have all white cars with blue stripes. And so that was your recommendation. Lieutenant Hamburger wasn't really happy about that. And I can understand your rank and file. You know, they like the dark black cars, but I think our cars need to have some place on them where Bolton and our, you know, town insignia is very clear. There's no reason that our cars need to look like all, you know, spiffed out, you know, car show lettering and everything kind of. It should, everybody, you know, it just, what you realize is that there are fashions in police car paint jobs, and we're definitely behind, like with the black, all black stealth look. Everybody else is either doing two-tone or white, and they're definitely getting their town insignia clearly, and they definitely says Bolton Police that you can read. And I would say of the last few vehicles, it's not very clear. The graphics aren't clear. You know, what is the car? What town is it in? You know, it's just not clear, and I don't think that's good enough. So, you know, I'm surprised you're coming here and saying that. I know you got a lot of heat from your crew, but I do expect, you know, a chain of command. So when we, as the Board of Selectmen, kind of vote on something, that it goes through. You recommended it, so I'm pretty disappointed, you know, with the whole chain of command, the sneakiness of like, let's have a vote, and then I'm going to bring up the paint color later. Yeah, I'm disappointed.
My turn? Good.
Sure.
My first point is, I never agreed to white, okay? I was forced to go to white, and when I talked to Dawn, I said, if I have to go to a white car,
Who forced you?
The Board of Selectmen.
No.
You guys ordered, I wasn't here to defend myself. I was on vacation, okay? Lieutenant Hamburger came to speak for me. He didn't come to speak for the department. He came to speak for me. You and Tom Frame changed the color of the cruiser. I recommended that we stay with black, and if we have to go to white, this is what I like.
No, that's not
Okay.
how it was related.
It was exactly how it went, okay? So unfortunately, you have your facts incorrect, okay? I dealt with Dawn, I was on vacation, and that meeting got stuck in under the thing. It was, we have to meet, so I sent Lieutenant Hamburger to speak specifically for me, okay? He spoke for me, he spoke for the department. Black cruiser, we will change the graphics. I could do that all day long, okay? You and Tom Frame jumped on the bandwagon to get a white car because you had one person and you that think black is bad. So sorry you feel that way, and I think it's my turn. I didn't say a peep when you were talking, okay? And like I said, we can change anything. Board of Selectmen approved that. They ordered us to do a white car, and Tom Frame twisted my remarks around. Clearly, I said, I want black, and if it has to be a white car, we will go with the white and blue. That's what I like. It matched the old cruisers. Fine, but that's if I'm ordered to do it. And you, and I don't think Stan approved that one. It was you and Tom Frame voted that in, not me.
I
Right.
voted against.
Yeah, so, yeah, it seemed pretty clear at the time.
I wasn't here. I was in a different state.
Right.
How could it be clear to you?
What's disappointing is the lack of respect and to the chain of command.
The first,
It
that's
seemed very clear
Point
in my
number two.
conversations with Don Lowe, who's your supervisor, that this is what you were recommending.
Because I had to. From a different state, I had to go with white. And point number two, if there wasn't interference from this board, this cruiser would have been done, we wouldn't be, how much time have you wasted, I wasted?
This isn't interference, this is supervision. It is not interference.
The next thing you can do is go to every department and see how many department, Board of Selectmen, go to their chief of police and have this much disrespect to question his authority on what cars or what color he gets for a car. Nobody does it, okay? Every chief of police I've brought this up to laughs at me, and he goes, they don't have this problem, okay? You've created this problem, not me. So I'm sorry to say that, but the interference is clear.
Chief
A
Nelson,
lot of stuff would have been
I
done.
think you're being disrespectful, I really do.
Oh, I sat here and listened to you and didn't say a peep. So there's many a times I wanted to say to you and Tom Frayne how disrespectful you guys treated me.
And I will agree with you, Chief Nelson.
This is kind of an ugly end to this.
Well, you've started it.
No, it's not about starting it. There was nothing started.
Yes, there was. You just threw me under the bus, and I'm not going to sit here and take that, okay? If you're going to slander me and make that kind of remarks, I have a right to defend myself. And you know what? For the past 2.5 years, I've put up with a lot of crap here. Okay? So, please tell me I haven't. And I haven't done a damn good job here for you.
Yeah, I think you're being disrespectful.
And you are too, sir, because you know what? I'm not going to let you do it anymore because you've been disrespectful to me too.
There's a chain of command. It's the selectmen.
Yep.
It's the town administrator, and then you.
So-
And when those documents come to us as, you know, the chief, this is what he's recommending, and that's what we voted on, and now you're coming back and saying you were forced to do that? I don't recall
As it
that.
was twisted by Selectman Tom Frayne at the time, he twisted that around, okay? I wasn't here to defend myself, was I? Okay? I had to give him comments to say, if I have to go with a white car, this is what I like. Not that I want to go to a white car, if I have to go to a white car. So, we can argue all day, that's just going to get worse.
And again, Chief, I will agree with you. You never, ever wanted to go to a white car.
It doesn't have to be a white car. It just needs to, the graphics need to be better. And I sent other pictures to Don of other cars.
You didn't like that.
The all-black car with silver Bolton, you can't read it. So just come up with a clear graphic.
I can do that all day long. I can give you a white graphics on a black car.
That would be
looks
great.
beautiful.
That would be great.
We gave those options. So I don't understand how this has gone so bad. You know, if a simple comment came to me and said, hey, brighten up the graphics, I would have brightened up the graphics. Black car, bright, and done. You have a car now.
But that was never the discussion.
No,
That one of the pictures I sent was like a black car with white doors, with, you know, the town insignia, Bolton Police. That's simple. That was one of them. I didn't send 10 pictures of all white cars to Don. So it's just really surprising to get all this emotion from you, you know.
Well, let me tell you,
9 months later.
when I sit across from you and take about 2 minutes of being slammed upside the head, you can only push somebody so far, okay? And you're not getting it correct. When you get the story correct, I'll agree with you all day long, but you don't have the right story. And I'm sorry, we were forced to go to a white car. For me, that was it. You told me to get a white car, I gotta go with a white car. I've gotta agree to something, so fine.
Mr. Sikansky, do you have any comments?
It's difficult to think what I could add to this.
I mean, because we're at a junction point now. We obviously, for a number of reasons, legitimate reasons, the vehicle that was supposed to be purchased has not been purchased. And we had a discussion here about potentially changing the purchase of what vehicle, and we took that vote.
But I think, you know, in regards to that, you know, the discussion of the color, and my recollection, since I wasn't a member of the Board of Selectmen at the time, that this decision was forced upon the chief, because I know the chief never wanted a change in the color. He made that very clear. Lieutenant Hamburger came in and made that point as well on behalf of the chief, so you're absolutely correct in that. But a decision was made by 2 selectmen to arbitrarily change the color. We're now hearing that, you know, that was not necessarily a decision that the chief of police wished to pursue, as well as the rank and file. But we're here now approving a change in vehicle, and I think it's, in my mind, I think it's germane, you know, since it was brought up by, you know,
The union?
by the union, I think it's a relatively reasonable discussion to have, and whether or not this is something we wish to discuss and potentially either vote to rescind the vote that was taken and allow the chief to have the vehicle in the color that he so chooses.
I'm not going to make any comments on the history. I'll just say I don't see any reason, I haven't heard any reason to change the color of the vehicles.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say something, because I was here, Bob wasn't here at the meeting, and I was, and the chief is right, the chief was not. The discussion point, as I recall it, was there was a concern expressed that black cruisers are scary, and they're intimidating, and people don't feel comfortable with them. So the color needs to change. So then it became, what is the color going to change to? And then Jonathan is correct. He took a bunch of pictures, he sent them to me. I forwarded them on to Chief Nelson. Chief Nelson had already received the message that the color is going to change. If it's going to change, what would your choice be from the array of colors or the array of options that were presented? And it was in that vein that he came back and said, if we're going to change the colors, then we had white cruisers before with blue graphics. That is the direction that I would go in. But the sequence, as I recall it, was the board declared that it wanted to see a change in color. So then what was the decision going to be? So that's how we got to the white and blue. Chief Nelson, in conversations with me, never said he preferred to go to a white vehicle. He said, if we're going to change, then this is what I would like to see. It's sort of a retro. It reminds us of the way things were before. But that direction was, the direction to change the color was given to the chief by the board. And then the next step was, all right, come back with a recommendation as to what the change should be. That's my recollection as to what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So the chief did not say he wanted to get away from black. The chief was told, we are getting away from black.
Mm-hmm.
Now you tell us what your recommendation would be. Is that essentially what you remember?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
So, I think, is there any more discussion amongst?
Well, I don't have a problem with black. I just don't think they should be all black, and there should be a place for clear lettering. So I'd like to see, you know, if you want to keep the black theme, but I'd like to see a new design, that the graphics, the town insignia, the name, Bolton Police is very clear. So we don't have these vehicles that drive around that you can't tell who they belong to. They could just be like Joe Schmo driving through with the heavy tinting in the dark, you know, dark SUV. So it would just be nice to know, oh, there's the Bolton Police. So I would like to shift away from that all black with silver, all black with gold. It's, you know, it's just, It needs to be clear where you are, who you are.
Well,
Certainly can come up with a totally different, graphics can be anything you want it. Really, you just go down, you talk to the graphic designer, and he builds what you want. If we want to make it more visible and bring out the town seal, put the Bolton PD, anything you need on there, we can make that bigger, whiter, clearer, whatever it takes.
I think that's fine. I think change the graphics fine. I personally, I know when it's a Bolton police car. I mean, it says Bolton, it's got the town seal. But we can certainly entertain that. So I think, given what Mr. Keeper said, I would like to make a motion that we rescind the vote of the previous Board of Selectmen. That was the vote to change the cruisers to white and blue, and continue on with the cruisers in general, the color that they are, but having the chief come back with some alternative and perhaps more jazzy designs for the graphics that might satisfy at least one Board of Selectmen in terms of visibility and the seal and all that good stuff. But that I think the overall decision on what the color of the vehicle should be left in the hands of the individual and the department that knows best, which is the police department. Do I have a second?
That was a really long motion.
Well, I wanted to be clear.
Okay, all right. I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'll abstain.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Chief, how long do you think that, because we're gonna wanna be able to get the graphics to
We have somebody.
we need to get the graphics to the selectmen prior to purchasing of getting the order in.
Yes,
So
yes.
how long do you
I
think that
will
will take?
send that over to Dan, because he can go down, we can draw something up, put a couple of versions together.
Absolutely. Get right down there and.
The next meeting is February 8th. If we could get it done February 8th, that would be great.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have it done.
We'll get that done.
I'll entertain a question.
I just, a matter of clarification, Chief, you said something to the effect that Boston and Lowell are changing over their cars to white for community relations.
No, they're already white. They already have white cars. So
And
that's
because of community relations.
well, your apples and oranges, because those communities they're trying to improve their high crime areas. And we don't have high crime areas in Bolton. So I don't need to worry about what color my car is when they go out to drive out to any of these roads to make any impression on anybody.
So it's interfacing with the community, they change the color of the car in order to increase community relations.
In high crime areas.
In high crime areas.
In high crime areas. So even in low crime areas though, wouldn't a change in the color of the car also help with community relations?
Everything helps, but we don't have a problem. I don't have people coming and telling me they're
So I guess if somebody did think that it would be good for the community to have lighter color cars, they should just email you directly? Because you're saying you're not getting any sort of response like that.
I've never gotten one person that's
There was a
told me.
person that was in that meeting that stood up and said something and then was put through hell for months because they stood up and said something. So you can imagine other people are potentially reluctant to say anything.
That's no doing of mine.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just suggesting that potentially there are other people out there that would like to see us not have a SWAT team in town.
It's true. It's true. It's not just Lowell and Boston. Nice towns, and we are a nice town, are trying to make their vehicles look like, hey, we're here to help. Not to punish you, we're here to help. So there is something's going on, and somehow your department doesn't want to move forward, but other towns are doing it.
I think
You know, it's-
we're getting far afield from the discussion of the vehicle. I think it's time to move on.
Well,
to the
yeah,
next agenda.
definitely, like, as an agenda item, Don, you know, there wasn't enough on here. You know, we went far afield.
Well, the agenda item was to just have a
Right.
discussion relative to the Explorer versus the pickup truck.
Right, we didn't have on here paint color, that type of stuff. I think as, you know, Chief Nelson supervisor, you knew what was coming. It should have been on the agenda and not this kind of sneaky little thing that happens.
I haven't done it, in 9 years here, I have not done anything sneaky with any.
This was not my agenda
But
point.
this
did
should
not come
be
from
on
me.
the agenda as, you know, very clearly, we're gonna discuss the paint color. As the chairman, I'm talking to you. So it shouldn't be like, update on new police cruiser, like I had to request, let's put on Explorer versus pickup truck.
I would be
It
real,
needs to
I
be
would be
more-
real careful
Yeah.
about your discussion about what should and shouldn't be on the agenda item and the detail. Because I can go back and I can bring up many an agenda item that you or your previous colleague put on there, where we went all over the place and didn't even have a clue as to what the agenda item. So I think I would be very careful. And I think we had a discussion about the choice of the vehicle, and I think it was very apropos to talk about all aspects of that particular vehicle. You may not like the fact that we brought up something that you and your
No, I just
previous
wanna be
colleague-
prepared.
Well-
So let's get it on the agenda. If that's what you wanna discuss, get it on the agenda. It should be there in black and white for everybody to see 48 hours ahead of the meeting.
I think we would have a discussion about the truck, and I think all aspects of the truck come into play. So I think we're done now. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
For coming in. Next up on the agenda is execute Form 43 for the change in manager on the country covered liquor license approved by the Board of Selectmen at the meeting on December 7th, 2017. So I think all we need to do is execute.
Yes, you
we
do.
have
This was
previous
already
vote.
approved, you just
Yep.
missed this form, so.
Okay.
Who signs it, everyone?
Right, I'm sorry. And yes, we have minutes.
No, you were not.
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't get some of them into this.
That's okay.
But I'll get to them for the next meeting.
We're getting caught up.
Thank you. So Stan, you should vote to approve these, please.
Yes, we have minutes. I make a motion that we approve the regular session minutes of March 2nd, 2017, April 13th, 2017, June 29th, 2017, and the executive session minutes for March 2nd, 2017. Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Abstain.
Okay. Do we have any other business? Did you have a question?
I would like to apologize for my phone making noise earlier.
Oh,
And it's embarrassing to me, but my phone was actually in do not disturb mode. So I'm going to file a bug report with Google that it should not be making any noise. But again, I'm sorry for that.
No, that's okay, that's okay. That happens.
Took care of it. Thank you.
No, that's fine, thank you.
Was there a packet?
Let us know if you hear back from Google.
You're just asking for it now? Well, I didn't want to bother you.
All right,
I
then,
didn't know.
moving on, we are going to move to an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the police union. As the chair finds that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the board's bargaining position, the board will not reconvene to open session. Do I have a motion to move?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Sikansky?
Aye.
Keith?
Yes.
Wasaki?
Yes.